Have you ever wondered, like, how robots, navigate a world that they can't see the way we do?
Yeah.
Today we're going, like, deep into this fascinating world of robot perception to explore how they use sensors and algorithms to understand their surroundings.
Right.
We've got a great YouTube lecture from Cyril Spatchness on SLAM, simultaneous localization and mapping.
Right.
Plus, we've got some supplementary materials in Chinese about Bayes filters and robot motion.
It's going to be fun.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting challenge because robots, unlike us, can't just open their eyes and instantly grasp the environment.
Right.
They have to piece together information from various sensors.
Yeah.
And that data is rarely perfect.
That makes sense. So how do they deal with all of that messy, uncertain information?
That's where Bayes filters come in.
Okay.
Think of it as a robot's reasoning engine.
Okay.
It helps them make sense of a world full of unknowns. Bayes filters use something called Bayes' rule, which essentially lets a robot combine new observations with what it already knows to update its understanding. And it does this constantly refining its estimates as it goes.
So, like, the robot is always learning and adjusting its beliefs based on new evidence. Isn't that similar to how we make decisions as humans?
It is.
Yeah.
We're always drawing on past experiences and incorporating new information to form our beliefs.
Right.
But wouldn't a robot need a massive memory to store every single piece of information it encounters?
Yeah, it would be like trying to remember every single step you've ever taken.
Exactly, like way too much.
Yeah.
How do robots avoid that kind of information overload?
Right.
They use a clever trick called the Markov assumption.
Okay.
This basically says that to predict the future, you only need a good understanding of the present.
Okay.
It's like saying, okay, I know where I am now, and I know what command I just received, so I can make a pretty good guess about where I'll be next. This simplification is crucial because it lets robots navigate complex environments without being bogged down by an overwhelming amount of data.
So, like, are we saying that they don't even use the past data at all?
Well, it's a simplification.
Okay.
And there are definitely cases where past data does matter.
Right.
And roboticists have to be mindful of that. But in many situations, the Markov assumption works surprisingly well.
Okay, cool. I'm starting to see how this works.
Yeah.
But let's say I give a robot some driving instructions.
Okay.
Is it guaranteed to follow them perfectly?
You're right to be skeptical.
Okay.
Robot motion is inherently uncertain.
Okay.
That's why we use motion models to predict where a robot will go based on the commands it receives. There are two main types.
Okay.
Odometry-based and velocity-based.
Okay.
Odometry is like counting your steps. It uses wheel encoders to track how much the wheels have rotated.
Okay.
Velocity-based models rely on the speed commands sent to the motors. Think of it like following a set of driving instructions. You think you're going straight?
Yeah.
But maybe your car drifts a little bit, like that shopping cart with the wobbly wheel.
Yeah.
That's the kind of uncertainty robots have to deal with.
So odometry is about looking at the past.
Right.
How far the wheels have actually turned, while velocity is about predicting the future.
Yeah.
How fast and what direction the robot should be moving.
Exactly.
Okay.
And here's a surprising fact.
What's that?
Odometry often provides more accurate position estimates than velocity, even though it seems simpler.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah.
Oh.
Even small errors in wheel size tire pressure or uneven terrain can throw off the velocity-based model's predictions.
Right.
With odometry, you're directly measuring the movement that has already happened.
Yeah.
So those external factors have less impact.
Okay, so the robot has some idea of where it might be based on its motion model.
Right.
But how does it figure out what's actually around it?
Robots have their own version of eye sensors. And just like with motion, we need sensor models to help the robot interpret the data it's receiving.
Okay.
These models depend on the type of sensor.
Uh-huh.
We'll focus on laser-based models since they're commonly used in robotics.
Okay.
Imagine the robot sending out laser beams and using the reflections to understand its surroundings.
Yeah.
One simple model is the beam endpoint model.
Okay.
It only considers the point where the laser beam hits an obstacle, ignoring anything that might be in between.
So that sounds kind of like trying to navigate a room by only looking at what's directly in front of your nose.
You're absolutely right.
Like, wouldn't that be a pretty limited view?
It is a limited view.
Yeah.
And from a physics standpoint, you could say it's a bit naive.
Okay.
But surprisingly, this model works well in practice, especially when you need a quick and straightforward approach.
Okay.
Then there's the raycasting model, which is more sophisticated.
Okay.
It considers obstacles along the entire path of the laser beam giving the robot a much richer understanding of its surroundings.
So it's like the difference between seeing a shadow and actually seeing the object that's casting it.
Exactly.
You get a much clearer picture with the ray casting model.
Yeah, you get much more information.
Okay.
If we connect this to our own experience, it's similar to how we rely on different senses to understand our environment.
Yeah.
We touch, smell, see, hear.
Right.
All these senses provide pieces of information that help us build a mental model of our surroundings.
Right.
Robots do something similar with their sensors.
That's a great way to think about it.
Yeah.
So we've covered how a robot predicts its own motion.
Right.
And makes sense of raw sensor data.
Yeah.
But what if it wants to recognize specific places in its environment?
Okay.
It's not enough to just know there's something there. Sometimes you need to know exactly what it is. Like,
right.
How do you do that?
That's where landmark perception comes in.
Okay.
Imagine a robot spotting a tree and knowing, based on its map, that it's the same tree it saw earlier.
Mm-hmm.
This ability to recognize distinct features is crucial for advanced navigation.
So how does a robot tell one tree from another? What kind of information is it using?
One common approach uses sensors that measure distance and direction.
Okay.
Much like our laser rangefinder, the robot can then calculate the likelihood of a measurement given its estimated position and the expected location of the landmark.
So it's using its knowledge of where the landmark should be.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's a bit like triangulation. The robot uses sensor data and knowledge of where the landmark should be to figure out if it's really looking at the same object.
It's like the robot is piecing together a puzzle.
Yeah.
Using its sensor readings to fill in the bigger picture of its map.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
And the more pieces it gathers, the more confident it becomes in understanding where it is and what's around it.
Right.
This brings us to the heart of SLAM.
Okay.
Where the robot is not only trying to figure out its own location,
yeah,
but also building a map at the same time.
Right.
So it's doing both of those things simultaneously.
This is all incredibly fascinating.
Yeah, it is.
We've learned about maze filters, motion models, and sensor models, all these tools that help robots perceive the world.
Right.
But we're just getting started.
I know, right?
In the next part, we'll tackle the challenge of SLAM and how robots use these probabilistic models to create maps and navigate complex environments.
Sounds good. Welcome back to our deep dive into robot perception and navigation.
Yeah.
Last time we explored how robots use sensor data and internal maps to recognize familiar places, which is called landmark perception. Now we're going to shift our focus to SLAM, simultaneous localization and mapping.
SLAM.
Yeah.
It sounds almost like a sport for robots.
Kind of.
What exactly does it involve?
Well, imagine you're dropped into a totally unfamiliar environment.
Okay.
You have to explore it while also drawing a map as you go.
Yeah.
That's the challenge of SLAM.
Okay.
A robot needs to figure out its location and create a map of its surroundings at the same time, all while dealing with noisy sensor data and those uncertainties in movement we talked about earlier.
That sounds incredibly difficult.
It is a complex problem.
Yeah.
Which is what makes it so fascinating.
Yeah.
There are actually two main approaches to SLAM.
Okay.
Online and full SLAM.
Okay.
Online SLAM focuses on figuring out the robot's current position and mapping the area immediately around it.
Okay.
Think of it like a tourist taking pictures of their immediate surroundings.
Okay, so online SLAM is about the here and now.
Right.
What about full SLAM?
Full SLAM is more ambitious.
Okay.
It aims to build a map of the entire environment, including places the robot hasn't even visited yet.
So like a whole building.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
The choice of which approach to use really depends on the task at hand.
Okay.
Exploring a vast unknown area.
Yeah.
Full SLAM might be necessary.
Okay.
But for a robot operating in a smaller, more defined space, online SLAM can be more efficient.
Okay, so let's say we're going with full SLAM. How does a robot actually go about creating a map from scratch?
It's not quite as simple as having a 3D printer inside.
Right.
Robots use their sensors and a lot of clever math to do this. One common approach is to use occupancy grids.
Okay.
Imagine dividing the environment into a grid, almost like a giant sheet of graph paper.
Okay.
The robot then uses sensor data from something like our laser rangefinder to figure out how likely it is that each square on that grid contains an obstacle.
So it's a bit like a robot version of paint by numbers.
Yeah, like that.
But instead of filling in colors, they're filling in probabilities of obstacles.
Exactly.
Okay.
As the robot explores and gathers more sensor readings, it updates these probabilities, gradually creating a more accurate map.
So early on, the map might be very blurry.
Exactly.
Uncertain.
Right.
But as the robot explores and gathers more data, the map becomes clearer with sharper distinctions between empty space and obstacles.
Right.
That makes sense.
It's constantly refining its understanding of the world.
Right.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
SLAM is an iterative process.
Okay.
The robot doesn't just build the map once and then stop.
Mm-hmm.
It's constantly updating its map as it moves, incorporating new readings and refining its position estimates.
Okay.
It makes me think of those old maps where the unexplored edges were fuzzy and undefined.
That's a great comparison.
Yeah.
But it makes me wonder.
That's that.
How does a robot know if it's encountered a brand new obstacle or just a different view of something it's already mapped?
Right.
It would be pretty embarrassing if it kept adding the same chair to the map from different angles.
Yeah, that's a key challenge in SLAM called the data association problem.
Okay.
The robot has to figure out which sensor measurements go with which objects on its map.
Yeah.
This gets tricky because, as you said, the same object can look very different depending on the angle or the lighting.
Right, like you wouldn't want it to map the same thing twice.
Exactly.
And think it's two different things.
Right.
Just because it's looking at it from a different angle.
Yeah, it's almost like trying to recognize a friend in a crowd who's got a new haircut and is wearing sunglasses.
Right, they might look totally different.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just like we use multiple cues to recognize people, their face, their voice, how they walk.
Yeah.
Robots use a mix of geometric and appearance-based features to solve this data association problem.
Yeah.
For instance, the robot might compare the shape and size of something in its sensor readings to objects on its map.
Mm-hmm.
Or it might use color or texture to tell objects apart.
So it's like the robot is playing Where's Waldo?
Yeah, I like that analogy.
But instead of finding a guy in a striped shirt, it's trying to match sensor data to objects in its map.
Exactly.
Okay.
And just like in Where's Waldo, sometimes the robot gets it wrong.
Uh-oh.
It might incorrectly associate a new measurement with something already on its map.
Right.
Leading to errors in its position or the map itself.
Yeah.
Or it might fail to recognize something it's already seen, leading to duplicate entries.
Well, that sounds like it could cause some real problems.
It can.
Especially if the robot is navigating a dynamic environment.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Imagine a robot moving confidently through a room and suddenly crashing into a wall it thought it had already mapped.
Oh, no.
That's why having really robust data association techniques is so critical in SLAM.
Okay.
Roboticists are constantly working on new algorithms to help robots make more accurate and reliable links between sensor data and their maps.
Yeah, it sounds like a really important problem to solve.
It is.
Especially as robots become more common in our everyday lives.
Exactly.
Okay, so far we've talked about occupancy grids and this data association challenge.
Right.
Are there other methods robots use for map building?
There are.
Okay, cool.
Another approach is to use feature-based maps.
Okay.
Instead of representing the environment as a grid of probabilities.
Yeah.
These maps focus on specific distinctive features like corners, edges, or those landmarks we talked about before.
So instead of a pixelated image, it's more like a connect-the-dots representation of the environment.
That's a good way to visualize it.
Yeah.
The robot extracts these features from its sensor data and uses them to build a more simplified but still very informative map.
Oh.
Feature-based maps are often used along with probabilistic techniques like something called the Kalman filter to estimate the robot's position and locations of these features.
Kalman filter, that rings a bell.
Yeah.
Didn't we talk about that with Bayes filters earlier?
You've got a good memory.
Uh-huh.
The Kalman filter is a specific type of Bayes filter that's often used in robotics for state estimation.
Okay.
It's especially well suited for dealing with things like the robot's position and orientation, which are continuous variables, and for handling noisy sensor data.
Okay.
Think of it like a specialized tool in the robot's perception toolbox.
So the Kalman filter helps the robot keep track of where it is and what's around it.
Yeah.
Even when the information it's getting is a bit messy.
Exactly.
Okay.
But like any tool, it has its limitations.
Okay.
The Kalman filter works best when the noise in the system can be modeled in a specific way.
Uh-huh.
And when the relationships between the variables are linear.
Right.
But in real-world scenarios, things are often more complex than that.
So sometimes the Kalman filter isn't the right tool for the job?
Right.
Are there other approaches for those more complicated situations?
Yes, there are.
Okay.
Roboticists have developed techniques like the extended Kalman filter and the particle filter. to handle situations where the assumptions of the standard Kalman filter don't quite hold up.
Okay, so it sounds like there's a whole toolbox of filters and techniques.
There is.
For dealing with different kinds of uncertainty.
Yeah, and they all have their strengths and weaknesses.
Right.
It's amazing how much complexity goes into something that seems as simple as a robot moving around and understanding its environment.
It is remarkable.
Yeah.
And this field is constantly evolving with new sensors, algorithms, and approaches being developed all the time.
Absolutely.
Yes.
It's a really exciting area to be working in.
Cool.
We've covered a lot of ground in our exploration of SLAM.
Yeah.
From those occupancy grids and future-based maps to the data association problem.
Right.
And even touched on the Kalman filter.
It's clear that robots use a whole arsenal of sophisticated techniques to navigate the world.
They do.
This has been a fascinating deep dive into SLAM.
Yeah, it has.
I'm really excited to see how it's being used in real-world applications.
Me too.
That's what we'll be exploring in the final part of our deep dive.
Sounds good.
Welcome back. We've spent the last 2 parts of this deep dive getting into how robots perceive and map the world.
Yeah, all those details.
Right, using tools like Bayes filters and tackling the challenge of SLAM.
It's pretty amazing what they can do.
It is. Now I'm really excited to see how all of this comes together in real-world applications.
Well, get ready to be impressed, because SLAM is making a huge impact across a wide range of fields.
Okay, like what?
One of the most prominent examples is self-driving cars.
Ah, yeah, makes sense.
These autonomous vehicles rely heavily on SLAM to create detailed maps of their surroundings,
Okay.
track their position with incredibly high accuracy, and safely navigate through traffic.
So the next time I see a self-driving car on the road, I can picture it as this little robot explorer.
Right.
Constantly mapping its territory and making decisions based on what it's learned about the environment.
That's a great way to think about it. And SLAM is going far beyond self-driving cars.
Oh, wow. Okay, so what else?
It's also being used in robotics for things like search and rescue missions.
Interesting.
Imagine robots going into dangerous or inaccessible places, mapping the terrain and finding survivors.
Wow.
And in healthcare, SLAM is playing a key role in developing surgical robots that can create 3D maps of a patient's anatomy.
Oh, wow.
Allowing surgeons to perform minimally invasive procedures with much greater precision.
That's amazing.
It is.
From autonomous vehicles to life-saving robots, SLAM is really having a transformative impact.
Absolutely.
It's exciting to think that the technology we've been discussing is actually being used to solve real-world problems.
Yeah.
And make such a positive difference in people's lives.
It's truly remarkable how much progress has been made.
Yeah.
And the applications are continuing to expand.
Like what? What else can it do?
In augmented reality, SLAM is used to track the user's position in real time, allowing virtual objects to blend seamlessly with the real world.
Oh, cool.
And in agriculture, SLAM-enabled robots are being used to monitor crops, assess soil conditions, and even perform highly precise harvesting.
So SLAM isn't just about robots exploring unfamiliar territories.
Right.
It's about helping robots understand and interact with our everyday world in completely new ways.
That's a great point. As robots become more common in our homes, workplaces, and cities, SLAM will be even more critical.
Yeah.
In enabling them to move around safely and efficiently, interact with us naturally, and perform a wider variety of tasks.
This has been such a fascinating deep dive into the world of robots and SLAM.
It really has.
We've covered so much ground, from those foundational principles of robot perception and navigation,
Right.
all the way to the real-world applications that are changing the world around us.
It's been a truly fascinating journey, and I hope our listener has come away with a new appreciation for the incredible ingenuity and complexity of these amazing machines.
We started this deep dive wondering how robots make sense of a world they can't see the way we do.
Right. A really fundamental question.
Yeah, we've seen how they use probabilistic models to deal with uncertainty, how they build maps, and how they're being used to solve some of the world's most pressing problems.
And who knows what the future holds.
Right. As this technology keeps evolving, I can only imagine the incredible possibilities that lie ahead. Thanks for joining us on this journey of exploration.